All right, good morning, everybody. Going to call this meeting to order. Don't believe we have any changes to the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from May 9th?
I move we approve the minutes.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion goes
That's three and 0.
3-0. And I'm assuming we don't have anybody in the public. We don't have anybody here present.
No.
So Mr. Rhodes is away and Lindsay Gregory's away.
And who?
Oh,
Lindsay.
Gregory.
Okay.
So we'll give them
Brandon's
reports.
training.
Okay. All right, going into unfinished business with the program plan. So I know I wanted to review this and I didn't have a chance to.
So in the package should have been reformatted. The only thing that's changed as far as content was they did add the water advisory committee. It's just one of the things that we're involved in, that wasn't on our scope.
Who's the nominee to go to that board?
The approved person as of last week. It was hard, she was zoomed in, so it's hard to tell.
And you have to come before the county commission and then we officially bless you.
She
Yep.
did, that was last.
I don't remember you being
It
there.
was via Zoom, so.
Oh. Okay, because the pictures that come up on Zoom are pretty nondescript.
Right, it was just the name.
Yeah, okay. Well, congratulations, welcome aboard. So many people are afraid of a water advisory. I don't understand it.
Well, you had a good number of candidates.
Yeah, I think we've had good people apply, so
Mhm.
I'm pretty happy about it.
So, do you need this approved this meeting or can you wait one more month?
So, you can make one more month. So I will give a progress report to them. This was part of our improvement plan of our failures from last year.
Yeah.
So that, yes, it's we discussed it. If anyone has any questions or really do want input in that, this is, what we're doing as of now, and this will change through the year as things come up, and I'd like to use this as a bit of a blueprint when we discuss, where are we on our plan, not just the financials, but are we actually doing anything, or is it all just?
Yeah, I love the idea. Is there anything in the statute that requires an annual evaluation of the plan?
Yes, as of this year, there is a annual evaluation by someone from the Bureau of Public Health Center for Local Health. They came this year. It didn't count, meaning we wouldn't get penalized to affect our amount of reimbursement by the state. But as of next year, which I think is March, we will have, 12 months after our evaluation this year, we will go. The clock is ticking, so everything we're doing is being monitored, and we're trying to keep real-time notes of the events, so we're not scrambling the day before. All that we've done for each of these areas.
Okay.
And the only two that we failed on, one is we did not have all our inspections up to date. And our two responses to that are that we had inadequate staffing, and that by the time they came, we had corrected the hires. Now and we'll get more into that during the environmental report. We're better on the staff who are now approved to do it. And then noting that there was a problem, there is a problem with getting newly hired staff to be able to be fully trained by the state and credentialed to do what we hired them to do, to be legal inspectors. There's some real problems with that, and that we're going to be working on it with the state, and that's ongoing, but it's still an issue, and that's something that the board as a community need to say, we in the Eastern Panhandle need more, because a lot of this is is specific to the Eastern Panhandle in that we're the place that's growing and
Mhm.
need all these new inspections. Other places, it's a non-issue.
Mhm.
They get 3 building permits a year, you know,
Hmm.
so. And then the second area was that we did not have a program plan that we're discussing now, a program plan for the last fiscal year that was approved by the board. And so the plan was we would prepare our response to that deficiency, we will prepare it, it would be completed and approved by the board by this meeting. But the progress on that is what I need to report, and I will do that and say they want to go over the details,
Mhm.
which is fine, and then next month, hopefully we will have actually the new board member that will be someone responsible for the plan for 26. If Mr. Simon is rotated off the board, so that, not that that's the reason for delaying, but so I don't see an issue with delaying that.
And there's a program plan and an activities plan, and together
So-
they
So the
complement.
first part of the program plan is more numbers and names. And I will, what I sent was the activities part of it, to me, the meat and potatoes. The other is more the structure of how many staff, what are our expected numbers of environmental permits, a plan for projected clinical visits, what's our organization structure, who are our board members, what are the contact numbers for supervisory personnel, how do is the board meeting available online, where are the minutes available, so some of these structural things that the state wants.
Mhm.
They used to require us to do that by March of each year for the next year. Um, the last year they stopped that, so it's no longer required to be reported to the state. We will report it to the state because that's part of our improvement plan, but as of the current regulations, we don't have to report this to the state. So some things they used to ask for, like home addresses for board members and all that. I'm trying to keep as much, not transparent, but privacy. The, so the, and Dan made it, Mr. Caprio made it. So that's, so they're not requiring it, but then they are if they ask for it.
Mhm.
And there's also, an organization of local health departments that's not part of the state, but they end up becoming a major intermediary officially with the state. It's not really a union, but it's a group of most of the health departments. They want this data so that they can be comparing and having an idea of what's happening with the 48 health departments in the state. So it's a bit of a work, but it shouldn't actually be hard going forward, because all this information, if we just keep it updated, it's real time. The does that answer your question?
Yeah. Any other questions?
Nothing.
All right, then we'll move on to new business.
Each year by statute, the health officer is appointed 1 year at a time, and each year needs to be a new appointment. I agreed to serve another year. Someday that won't be the same, but it's something to continue to think about is where we go in the future. The health officer used to have to be a physician with public health interest. Now it can be an advanced practice nurse. So the same qualifications now. Which does give some options, and before I came, when Dr. Didden was trying to find someone to fill the spot, and before I went to Berkeley, trying to find someone to fill the spot was difficult.
So is it okay if I go ahead and just make a motion to approve Dr. Rudy continuing on for another year as our health officer?
I second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
I,
Please reflect, Dan said aye. The motion passes. And thank you for agreeing to another year with us. We appreciate all that you do.
Should turn out to be an interesting one with our grant uncertainties.
Mhm.
Funding
Yeah.
uncertainties.
we're gonna have fun, is that what you said?
you can't leave until we do.
Yeah. I've got one more year.
I thought you were a lifer.
Oh, me?
In one way or the other.
Right. All right, we'll move on to the financial updates.
Right. Good morning.
Morning.
All right, for April, you have a bank balance of 499,000. Take off your reserve amount of 398,000, you are left in compliance by 101,000. For April, your revenue was 395,000. We're gonna take off salaries of 88 and operating expenses of 36,000 for a surplus of just under 271,000. Fiscal year to date, you have a revenue of 1,250,000, which is down 7% of your budget. I did speak with Brandon prior to the meeting. He says there are still grants that need to be billed. And that'll apply for here in May. All right, less salaries, 1,085,000, and operating expenses of just under 314,000 for a deficit of 149,000. Current accounts receivable is 213,000. There are no significant receivables over 10% of that total. Any questions about April?
Yeah, the 121,000 and other receivables, 1 to 30 days, that's almost doubling what was currently there. It seems like a large amount of billing.
It's the environmental health permits, they go
That's
out April first, those
Okay.
will start to reflect April first.
Yeah, so this isn't the clinical delivery, this is the environmental.
I think so as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, why it jumped so much.
And that makes better sense.
And that's 121.
It'll
Watch
be,
that for
we've
next
already
month.
received, quite a lot of those payments, so I'm assuming this is whatever was left over at the end of the month.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I think seeing this by clinical delivery and health environmental services, there's some value there. They're two separate animals and what's the health of each of them, but thank you, that was the answer. And then the 36,000 in operating expenses for April seem a little bit higher than run rate. Is there anything particular that comes to mind? And maybe like May was 28,000. I always remember that being kind of in the 20s.
Didn't see anything that stand out, but I can look over it again and get back to you.
That's all I had.
Okay. Any other questions on April?
Let's go over to May before we vote on accepting it all.
Sure thing. All right, for May, you have a bank balance of just under 383,000. Your reserve amount is 366,000. So you are in compliance by 16,000. May's financials, your revenue was 70,000. Salaries and wages was 162,000, which I do realize is higher than normal. There were 3 payrolls and also 2 health benefit payments. It looks like April was paid in May. And your operating expenses of 28,000 for a deficit of 120,000. Fiscal year to date, you're at 1,320,000 in revenue, which is 11% down. Again, that's grants do need to be invoiced. Salaries and wages, $1,247,000, which is 5% above budget. And operating expenses is $342,000, which is 5% above budget. Accounts receivable for May, $176,000, which none of which is significant, over 10% of that total. Questions on May?
So now the 79,000 that you have in the 31 to 60 day arrears, if you will, is that just a transition of the environmental permit
Yeah.
stuff that you just expect is still gonna keep coming in?
Yeah, the invoices will be dated for April 1st, so May 1st, they would have hit the above 30 days.
The bigger concern is the over 90 days is still growing.
And so we did, this would be part of the administration report, but this is good a spot. We did talk with Group Medical Management Solutions about the solution for this, as well as other issues of looking at our processes. And they're, we've worked with them before, this is in the area for several decades. So they're going to submit a contract with us to work with us to adjust this off, and we'll of course, work with you. We had hoped maybe we could get it done by this month, but it's gonna slip into the next year. But as we talked about last time, it's an accounting change. It doesn't affect the cash on hand. We'll take a hit as a business expense, the right office said, correct?
You know, cause I mean, if you total up, like, so say. There's roughly 90, and sorry, I'm just looking at this from the deficit perspectives, like there's roughly, say, $90,000. 80,000, just under 80,000 that could be largely the permits, and then another 10 that are in the. In the segment, and then the over 90 days is another 90,000, but. Our deficit is at 269, so essentially. Or 270, so. We're still gonna end the year right now, if we continue to track in this way, we're gonna be ending at 180,000 deficit. So what can we do to help narrow that? Cause the clock's running out, we're in the last month of the fiscal year.
So it will be narrowed a little bit by a few of the grants, so one is the QRT grant, which we can't bill till after a quarter has ended. That's off schedule, it starts in September 1st, so it's so the quarter that ended in May, we can bill that now, and hopefully we'll get that. And I am not sure of the other ones that are presently outstanding there. I'm not sure if the state aid one, there's often a fifth quarter or a supplemental thing. There, as we look back on, there's one grant payment through the past year that we didn't get, probably due to a billing error on our part. So if we look at, looking at a ball game, that the errors that are made, you have to review them, and so we see that as something we did not make. That would not close the gap, by $200,000. The big way we have to make it up, and this is going to be a progress report, we look at monthly with regard to our staffing, which is the expenses, balancing expenses. Are we increasing our clinical services? And we identified that really probably comes down to advertising at this point, marketing it, getting more people in the door. Otherwise, I don't see a operational way of closing it, except by having fewer staff. which we don't wanna talk about, but we have to think about also, because we don't know what's happening with some of the grants which largely support the clinical program. You know. That's- Yeah, so it's a big issue that, going forward, we our budget is based, the projected budget for this year, coming year is based on prior years, and there's some assumptions in there that are, could be viewed as optimistic. And if we, I think there was 100 and some surplus in that budget. If we, just say there's gonna be no surplus, it's the income is 100,000. Too rosy, that brings us closer, but it still doesn't eliminate that debt. So we did not build any optimistic increase in, but we did continue the same, pretty much the same, clinical services for this coming year that we had this past year. We didn't meet that expectation. So
So out of
making sense.
So I'm hopefully throwing a lifeline here, like, so out of the grants that we have outstanding that you expect, so let's say we're looking right now, potentially around about 170,000 ultimate. Deficit based on some of the rough numbers we've talked about. How much of that would be covered by grants that are outstanding that you're billing or fixing billing and?
So I don't follow that closely.
Okay.
Let me just say 70,000. I do not know for sure. And I think a good bit of the 31 to 60 days, let's say 60,000 of that is environmental that will come in before July 1st, because that's when the new permit has to be in effect. So over 100,000.
So 70 in grant money, 60 in environmental.
Right, that would be my hope.
But the environmental is already booked as revenue. I don't think that's gonna increase the debt,
Oh, no,
decrease the gap.
Right.
That's a cash flow.
right.
Am I right? I just wanna make sure I see it.
Yeah, we're per role basis,
Yeah,
so
that's right.
they've been employees, they've been counted.
There will be some clinical payments that come in, there'll be some fees that haven't been charged because they're new fees that come in with new service requests for environmental, but it's not going to be tens of thousands likely. It's
Okay. So, I'm sorry. go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. When the budget was done last year, there was a very simplified one-page listing. You know, I know the variance to budget and actuals to budget are here in QuickBooks that are about 3 pages each with a lot of sub detail. But is there a summary view? Like, here was the budget as approved by board last year, 1 page, high level, where does that $100,000 variance land? Is it in a revenue miss because of clinical delivery didn't achieve, or is it a over optimistic grant expectation that didn't get received? Like, where does it land?
So it's a combination, probably $100,000 of it is of the revenue expectation of medical services that were not done. Some of that is immunizations that were well below, and that was the bulk of it. Then other clinical services are smaller pieces, but the actual numbers of patient visits was well below budgeted, and that that expectation was largely carried over into the projected budget. Another deficit was that the last June through August quick response team grant was not billed to the state in as soon as it could be. It has been billed now, but they're saying it's too late to get that money. That may be $30,000 or $40,000. We've elevated that to another, but the grant is not closed from the, we end up having to sign something saying we agree with the final grant closure piece. We've not seen such a paper. So we've elevated that to a higher level person and haven't heard back as far as I know. So that's something we're still working on. The other piece is that and this is unfortunately true with grants, in that the quick response team grant was not, we were not given it to submit until a week before it started to submit our grant request, but it was not finally approved until I think the end of February, which was halfway into the grant year. So that we incurred expenses for that, $80,000, let's say, of personnel time. We couldn't even bill it because it hadn't been signed off on yet. So we billed that and we did get one, and I think there's another 30,000, or maybe it's two that have happened since the start of this month. So that will close it a little bit. So I do see some narrowing, but I would say between over optimistic projection of income on medical side and problems with lag and errors on our part in the billing of the quick response team, which should be 100% paid for, but hasn't been. And hopefully we can close that by getting this done.
This page, Brandon, sort of has the year-to-date expenses last year and versus this year too.
So I'm wondering if, looking at fiscal, there's not a ton that we can do with this fiscal year. Sounds like the gap will be a little more narrow than what we're looking at right now, but I'm just wondering if we should ask staff for fiscal year 26 or a new fiscal year that'll start July 1st is almost like a plan B budget. And even though we've submitted our budget to the state, I think it would behoove us to have a downward projected revised budget maybe to operate against. So if we do outperform and do perform to plan A budget, that's great. If revenue comes in better and all of those other pieces. But I wonder if we should have a second budget that's been revised down, maybe more in line with this year's performance to work against, so that we're not dealing with a deficit next year.
I think that's appropriate, and I'd like to, as I mentioned before, like to look at our true expected performance by the month of how many
We're gonna break.
do we expect this month? Do we need to get this month versus how many have we done? Same with how many payments do we expect to come in, and say, well, did we bill it? You can't be waiting for it if you didn't even invoice it.
Yeah.
So looking at looking at our performance, our administrative performances, are we actually doing the same with clinical billing? Is looking at our whole billing process of, are we on the ball? Are we getting more efficient in doing that? And our clinical expectations, when we're putting them in the budget, are they pretend, or is it what we're really expecting to get reimbursed?
But yeah, and I think to that same, but I think to the sort of solution, at least to have on paper that we're all operating off of, is to have a revised budget. And with like, I don't know if we need to vote on this or what, but. To direct staff to have that ready for next
Next
meeting.
week.
And if there's specific detail you want to see, let us know. I mean, for example, when I look at it and I see our numbers of dues and subscriptions is higher by 10 or 20,000 than in prior years. Like, what is that?
Mhm.
You know, is that Ladies Home Journal for the front room?
Well, but I think that's something. I don't know that needs to. We know Dan's listening. And again, that's details I don't know that we need to decide. We don't need to start counting paper clips. I think it's, look, I just went through this in my own work budget is sort of if the economy takes a downturn, if, all of these different factors that we can't control. We have a budget prepared to work against, should be, and I know exactly in my own budget, what I can, okay, I can take that out, and dues and subscriptions is a big one, or you can just knock that out, so I think. You guys as staff, and it's unfortunate that Brandon's not here, but I would imagine this is kind of in his responsibility scope. Is to, okay, what can we cut out? Yeah, maybe switch to the Wall Street Journal instead of Ladies Home Journal, I don't know, but.
You just get it off the.
It's actually very expensive. Wall Street Journal is very expensive, so. So yeah, so I don't know if my colleagues have any, views on having this sort of Plan B budget established, but.
No, I like it. I wish I apologize for not being here for the budget discussion, last month, but. Was it just a run rate carried forward? What were the expectations on revenue, especially around the clinical delivery side? How was that budget amount determined?
So it was not building from individual patient visits per month, saying, okay, well, this contribute, will that contribute, which, instead of looking at the pot, saying what's all this stuff is, I'd like to know what each component is, but it was not done in that manner. So it was more bringing forward a prior year.
Okay. So, and that's a prior year of actual performance, so it seems like there was optimistic expectations on clinical delivery revenue. Wasn't met, but that didn't carry forward into the next budget year. You pulled actual performance in.
No, actually,
No.
last year's, and Brandon's the one that brought the number forward. I won't throw him under the bus, but I think he looked at what was budgeted this past year and brought that forward.
All right, that sounds like a problem to me.
And, we can certainly, look at giving you a Plan B that's revised that, in light of where we're, especially once we know our pretty close to our June numbers, because we can run similar reports before the close of the month, and we'll know by that final week how much extra money has come in and what our year loss has been. Because there won't be many, unlike prior years, there was this huge account receivables that was, there isn't that now.
Like there's even, even in the budget discussion, when we talked about the impact fee, the impact fees that are coming in July 1st. We questioned the carry forward from this year in terms of the permitting. Well, if impact fees are gonna subdue growth, then we're not gonna have that revenue. But the fact is, we still pay for the sanitarians, right? You can't dial up a sanitarian when things get increased. That's, those are essentially fixed costs for us. So we know we have to keep our sanitarians in place. However, we know our revenue is likely gonna come down. If it's not, great, but if it is, we're prepared for it. And so I think, again, coming back with a Plan B budget, that's the one we work against, that's more conservative and more in line with the actuals as we finish out the year. I think that's the smart way to go about doing it, so that we're not having this conversation this time next year,
Yeah,
or at least avoiding it or preparing for it.
So say this is becomes, trying to make this more realistic based on current analysis of where we stand, is that we won't have that 170 surplus in next year's budget. At best, it's gonna be zero. And perhaps more realistically, it's going to be below that. The trouble is, we don't have enough in our bank account to be more, to be in a deficit.
Right.
Um,
We can cover this year's, we're not gonna be able to cover next year, especially if we continue to have these losses, so we need to fix this now.
Our bank account didn't suffer because we got 200,000 from outstanding accounts receivable for grants. And many of them were COVID funding grants. So from an operating standpoint, we're just squeaking by. Or not.
Well, every year we have hopes that the county commission's gonna help with some funding, and none of that has ever been forthcoming. So I think we might be more realistic by assuming that that's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah, I think we're gonna take care of ourselves. Same with First Foundation and other things that I don't think that's gonna come along, whether someone brought forward, we've got a major grant from a foundation. And it's gonna be $12,000, which is gonna pull us in a different direction, and it's like, it's not very major.
Right.
Just my 2 cents worth as a county commissioner is I think a less optimistic, perhaps more realistic budget that doesn't show a surplus will help your cause in getting funding. It's just my feeling from conversations that I heard this past year. So, and you certainly deserve money from the county government. So you're high on my list as far as getting more funds. So let's go forward. I mean, this discussion that I just heard was very good and very thought-provoking, and I think you're on the right track. So
And then the other piece, looking at things we've done in the past, which we've corrected, is that things that aren't approved in that budget for hires and expenses, if it's above a certain amount, we won't go forward. So if there's a position that's not approved in that budget, we need to ask permission. Any substantial expenses related to moving to the new building, we put zero into that. Because we don't have anything, to bring to the table.
It's called a pickup truck and a can-do attitude. That's how the moving happens.
Yeah, 2 pickup trucks like that.
Perfect. It's how we're doing it. We're doing an office move at work, and my boss said, well, you can either move it yourself and get good furniture or pay for moving costs. I'm like, everyone pack up your stuff and you're throwing it in my Jeep. Cause we're gonna get nicer furniture. So, it's prioritizing, right? And how do you, and look, it's not like the staff doesn't work really hard to, we do, we're not asking, but it's a choice, right?
And the big asset that doesn't show up here is our staff. I think that we've got some good team spirit moving forward. We've got people who are willing to help do the lifting, and, pack the truck.
Pack the truck and create a chain, just keep handing the box right into the building.
Big lifters.
Yeah.
well, speaking of moving into the new building, have you gotten together with anybody and looked at the space you're allocated
Yes.
and offered them a plan?
So last week, we were invited along with many other the future tenants. Mr. Rhodes and I went and looked through that, and then yesterday he spent time with the architect.
Okay.
And
Excellent.
our initial wish list. There's some real considerations of how you transform that big open space with these high windows that go up through the second floor, how make it a usable space for a health department with confidentiality and, all that issues and, but so what the structural problems are, we're glad to have the space, but I have no idea what the build out cost would be on that.
All right, any other questions on the budgets and financials? We ready for
No, maybe just to be clear, for next month, you're gonna provide a revised budget. And if, I don't know how possible it would be, but what is the budget A, what is budget B, kind of having it together? What is the 12-month run rate performance for 2025? Have that on there as well. Just so we can kind of see kind of the landscape and maybe the more streamlined view of the budget, not the detailed view of the budget.
And I can also present a comparison of the prior year budget, an analysis of last year's projection and what we did and where you can see that on here pretty well, that we're highlighting it for you. That this was where we see the problem with why this not match. Did we do poorly on collecting monies, billing grants?
Mhm.
Did we just not deliver the services and do shots?
Yeah, and then just one last thing, I think as we move forward. Well, like, obviously, the department has to hold water, and it can't be losing money every month or any month. And there's a lot of distinct things happening with environmental services versus clinical delivery. And just being able to kind of parse out the revenue and the expenses for each of these programs. And because it might be that we need to focus a lot on one area and the other area is holding water and perhaps subsidizing the losses in another area. And it's just not really terribly clear right now. Kind of, I think we have the assumption in the high level view is that it's clinical delivery, but to what extent, and to be able to going forward, see the revenue and expenses by program, I think there's something to aspire to. Yeah.
all right, is there a motion to accept April's financials?
I mean, we accept April's financials.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Your report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're gonna move into our environmental, so environmental.
All right, so, the county, planning and zoning office set the deadline for permits to be in order to have your permits before the impact fees go into place.
Is it applied for or approved?
Yes, yeah,
Applied.
just to have them submitted to the office. That deadline was May 30th. So that has since passed. So this month of activities is going to be what I assume to be the final stretch of this crazy time. So with that being said, we did see pretty similar numbers in the 40s for site evaluations. Applications did drop from 51 to 39. So I do think that we're starting to see kind of that trend back to normal volume, which is definitely exciting to see a little bit of a break. But I'm going to keep monitoring that pretty closely to see where we end up stabilizing at and what we can expect on a monthly basis. The food handler cards, for some reason, that number didn't get put in. I apologize. That was 107 for this month of May, which is a little bit above average, but pretty much right where we normally are. Sanitarian update, we have 3 sanitarians, 1 returning from maternity leave, so 3 of us that are fully able to do all inspections. We have 2 that by the end of this week will be cleared to do all food inspections. And we do have kind of an estimated timeline for when they will get cleared on everything else. Minus the one sanitarium that will only be cleared on septic. So hopefully by the end of June, we should expect to see them all cleared, minus the one that's only septic. With that being said, we're doing pretty good. Inspections are continuing to climb, which is good. We've already actually surpassed this number for the month of June. So I think we're in the low 50s for the number of inspections. But that being said, we still have a long way to go. We were dinged on our audit last year for not being able to hit our inspection frequency. We are maybe a little bit below halfway where we need to be for the entire year. So not too far off since we're about 50% of the way through the year. And I do think that we'll be able to close that gap having a full staff able to do those inspections.
And those are random audits by the state, they just come in and just pick somebody at random?
This is you mean for the environmental side, what they're doing? This is the first time that the state has done this, so we don't really know how they determined it or what the normal audit is gonna look like. But this past year, they came in and they just picked random facilities and checked to see if they had been done. So we had no idea which ones.
So we know this will happen next Marchish as the 12-month, and that we are pretty sure they will randomly, to us, it looks random, that they will say, can you show me the inspection for this?
Right.
And then you have to run and get the folder, or pull it up on the computer, and they picked two, and two of them had they had been inspected in the last year, but by their class, they were supposed to be inspected every 6 months, which they hadn't had their second one for the year. So we didn't meet the criteria. You also have a bit of a tracking mechanism now.
Yes, yeah, we the program has been entirely overhauled. It's been moved to digital inspections, which has significantly decreased the workload for the sanitarians to be able to just do the inspection in the field and it automatically goes into a digital database. There's no extra data entry now taking extra time. So that has significantly increased our ability to spend more time out doing inspections, as well as I can now see and track what has been done instantaneously, which is very helpful. I know where I need to direct attention to, like which parts of the county are maybe seeing, not seeing as many inspectors. And we're catching up on a lot of them that have been backlogged for a while. So I do think by the end of this year, we will be at the very least very, very close to where the state asks us to be. So it's good news.
We've been at one third strength of where we should be for most of this calendar year. We're at least half strength now.
Yeah, I mean, we only had, essentially two functional sanitarians for the first 3 or 4 months. And now that's finally changing, so.
Exciting.
To do. But the good thing about having new people is that they're enthusiastic. And it's like, I remember when I was a fresh sanitarian, you get excited to go to places you've never been before. To see what it looks like back there. So they're excited and they're out there and really enthusiastic to do these inspections, which definitely helps. So
How long does it take for the malaise to set in?
So we're gonna keep, I'm gonna leave it on a positive note.
50 years, right?
Right.
Oh, that's pretty
There's no malaise. What do you mean?
Yeah.
We're always happy.
Depends on us.
Yeah, it's good. We got a good group. We're, motivated, I think. So it's a good attitude.
That's great, thank you.
So are we covering threat and clinical today or?
Yes, I do have some prepared notes. I
Okay.
may not be able to elaborate on them, but I'll leave you with what they left me. Threat preparedness, that position, I don't remember if we spoke about this before, so I apologize if I'm being redundant, but that position is being split, both ways between, a threat prep coordinator and part-time sanitarian. And that is mainly just to be efficient with the staff we have. So threat preparedness activities really are only gonna take about 50% of an individual's time. So this is allowing us to meet our state mandate for the threat preparedness activities, but also give us a little bit of needed help in the environmental side without having to full on hire another sanitarian full time. So this has been really helpful. He's very motivated, very excited about this, and doing really well. He is in training today. But as far as his threat preparedness, he did go to a training last month. I apologize, I don't know the details. I think it was in Charleston, right? They
Yes,
went to Charleston.
he and Mr. Rose both went to that.
Right. I think this was just a regional threat preparedness meeting with the state coordinator. Just routine meeting. After which we did host a tabletop exercise for all staff, to talk about what we would do in the event of an extended power outage. We assessed our building, made sure our generator's working, made sure, what, like, you know, if we had any backup options for Wi-Fi, and kind of talked about how we would communicate that to the public if that were to be an extended event. And that was pretty successful. I think it was well received. That's all I have for.
And on Tuesday of this week, Mr. Rose and I went to a meeting in Augusta, which was regional from, I guess, 8 counties, with a scenario of a drought with all sorts of confounding issues. So it was a real life the type of thing that was tailored to things we wanted to look at in the county, with EMS and other emergency response personnel there. So Jefferson sat at one table, Menlo sat at one table, and we discussed the scenario that they wrote several different modules, and it was actually very good. These are good for considering it, but they've also developed, you know, over the years, the bonds with these other local agencies who we would otherwise not necessarily work with, which is especially important for us because EMS is always working with law enforcement, you know, every scene, but we don't, so that was helpful, you know.
Clinical?
Did you have more on the other,
On,
or did Lindsay give you a report?
yes.
Yes.
For clinical vaccines, were where we would expect them to be at this time of year. There's usually a lull in these early summer months, but that's gonna pick up as we move closer to the new school year. As well as we do have a vaccine clinic scheduled for the second week of July. And we do have an additional vaccine clinic that's being planned for August, just ahead of the new school year. And depending upon if those are very successful, there's, I believe the most recent word was that the school board is going to enforce the immunization requirement, right?
Yes, as of an announcement 2 days ago, I believe, by the Secretary of the Department of Education, is that they, the board directed this person to clarify that they are following the state law, the law that was approved by the prior legislature, and that that they feel that that's still the law that they need to follow, and that puts it in conflict with the governor's directive, and that's going to, you know, we'll be watching the ping pong ball back and forth, and
Yes.
ultimately, I think this is going to be decided by the courts or or another legislative meeting or something, but, as we've stated before, that if someone brings in someone underage to get a vaccine or any other procedure, we would follow whatever the laws are about whether this person can consent or not. And for the most part, we're talking about child shots, is no, their parent or guardian has to give signed approval for the vaccination. If they don't want to bring their child in for that, then we're not in the picture as far as what happens at the school if they don't have it. That's, I can talk with the school nurse. I can talk philosophy and medical, but I can't talk the policy as far as it's not my purview, like we have shots.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So nothing about our usual yearly activities has changed, is my understanding, based upon those discussions that are happening in Charleston. We're still gonna continue to offer those childhood immunizations and advertise for our clinics as the school year draws closer. As well as, it does say that the third one is contingent upon grant funding through Threat Prep. The quick response team has been slower than usual due to vacations, summer vacations. But it does say momentum is gradually picking up. For blood draw specimens, I think that we talked about this a little bit. We're experiencing some issues with FedEx, which they're not overnighting as we pay for the overnight shipping, they're not arriving at the lab. Meaning that some of those specimens have been unable to be tested. Is that my understanding? Or they're lost?
So this is primarily with our sexually transmitted infection population, in that ideally every day that we're open, if someone needs to come in and get evaluated for that, my desire would be that we have that capability. The reality is it gets shrunk into different time frames. You need to schedule or you need to come in on this day. The important piece is that this becomes free to the person. And our staff time is already paid for. We have some medication for treatment that we can dispense or administer. And then laboratory testing is sent to the state where it's done by the State Office of Laboratory Service at no charge to the client. The problem is twofold. One is transporting to Charleston, as you all know, is not that you just put it on the courier that goes 3 times a day to Charleston. It's you get a commercial carrier to bring it. These are temperature sensitive specimens, and so they can't sit at room temperature for only so long, depending on the kind of specimen. And if it's not delivered within a certain time frame, it becomes unusable, is discarded. So unlike our mail, so if our mail comes late that day and is put in the box at 6 p.m., we still get it. If you arrive after the lab has closed for the day, there's nowhere to put it. It doesn't get received. The lab closes Friday afternoon, let's say 5 o'clock, I don't know the exact time, does not reopen until Monday morning. There's no one to receive or process specimens that arrive, except the 40 hours a week of regular business hours. So we've had problems in that so we'd say if we send it on Tuesday, it should certainly get there before 5 o'clock on Friday, if it's overnighted, several overnights. It's not happening, and I can't blame Office of Laboratory Services hours for that. So the carrier becomes an issue. Berkeley has solved that by they have clinic 1 day a week. It's Wednesday mornings, and so they know on Wednesday morning, if they only have it once a week, that they will always on a Wednesday morning have at least one specimen that's collected, so they have a routine scheduled pickup by FedEx at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Whereas if we see somebody and we call them, we have to give them a 4 hour advance notice. So if we call them in the morning, they should be here in the afternoon. Well, that's sometimes not happening. So we've had service delivery problems. There aren't many options. And we aren't the only
Can we not
place.
do a Berkeley model of,
We could, but then that creates a different barrier to service. But right now, it's bad. I mean, if we're seeing the people and then this is complete waste. It's
yeah, we're still not accomplishing
yeah.
our goal.
so it's so there's a real problem here with how we solve that. And if a person has commercial insurance and they don't mind this showing up on their bill, then we can do the service and send it to LabCorp. It'll be picked up each afternoon. You know, so there's no problem with private payers. But if you want it free, you're gonna, get less availability. We have in the past not been seeing people from private using a third party. But we're gonna go to doing that. So that may help with some people. But it's so it's gonna be on Mr. Rhodes' plate to try and get to Tom Hanks or someone to get that.
What does this test cost? If it was a cost that we absorbed, if it was sent to Quest or
It
LabCorp?
would cost hundreds of dollars.
Okay.
Because we do blood samples as well as urine samples for different things, hepatitis, HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea.
How many are submitted each month on average to the state lab?
I do not know that number.
Probably
Probably way less than 20.
Okay.
But
Well, that's still material though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is this number the ones that have been tested, or it just says patient encounters
Sorry,
under the sexually transmitted infection activity?
that would be patient encounters, so people we've seen.
Not necessarily sent out blood.
So most every one of those will have something set out.
Okay.
So it's
So
about
it's less than
20,
20.
less than 20.
I guess just moving, is that your health officer report or do you have more?
Let's see, so one area of threat, so there's several grants that we do not know for sure what's going to happen. Even the ones we think we know for sure, we're not for sure, but the threat preparedness, we've not had clear submission of that. If that ends up not being approved at the federal level, then that's $100,000 or something like that. That the whole just a couple of years ago is when they put in our requirements is that we had to have a threat preparedness person. It was always an expectation. They elevated that, so we have to designate someone as that. It does not mean they have to be full-time. And it was usually somebody that did that as well. And in the past, it had been people with different roles. Sometimes it was an office assistant who that became one of their responsibilities. So we're looking at that. But that's certainly if that happened, spending time going to regional meetings or talking about going to national meetings, I think, pretty much now we're probably not going to be able to consider spending this money going to national meetings for those thousands of dollars, even if we get the grant, because we've got to use that to cover other things that we're doing. Threat preparedness also covers our reportable diseases, which is about half the time of a staff member calling people who have been identified as having certain chlamydia or giardia or other foodborne illnesses, calling people with tuberculosis, tests that are positive. Usually these are not active cases, but that's what we have to figure out, and help get them into treatment. Or animal bites, which is 300 plus a year. We have to be sure that those who need to get treatment are getting treatment, and that takes, that's been usually done on the environmental side. And that could take a couple hours a day so these are things we'll have to do, which you say that's covered by the state aid. But there end up being a lot of different things that are covered by state aid. So that's,
Let me pause for a second. Apparently our video feed froze.
oh,
Did he try to get back on because he got kicked out?
Therese. Did Mr. Rhodes have anything else on his report?
Yes. We have a couple more and it's, we already talked about some of this, which is, just as a reminder, working with the medical management solutions to eliminate the debt that was outstanding. And we talked about meeting with the Jefferson County architect to begin to plan our health department space, in that area. We talked about hosting the tabletop exercise. And then we did begin the process of updating some of our building software, to add on, increased internet support to make it run faster. And to allow for the use of terminals to process the payments faster, because before they were having to manually type in the credit card information for each payment. Now we have the contactless, touch to pay kind of stuff, which is helpful. And it just says we're working with the county building and maintenance manager on additional office spaces in this building, to maximize our usage, up until the anticipated move. I believe that right now the plan is that those empty rooms that were formerly the Red Cross offices are available for use now. And we have put in a request to occupy those rooms, which should begin around June 15th. We'll be able to
Is there
start
a
moving
cost
stuff.
associated with that?
It will be in kind.
Okay, so but there's no like build out costs or anything
No,
like?
we're gonna use what's there.
Okay.
We don't know if we need any locks changed or anything. We haven't,
Right. But we're not knocking out
finalized.
walls
No,
or
Right.
any
no, there's gonna be
major
no-
furniture
No.
purchases.
No
Like,
Going in as is.
you don't know that that's useful use of money since we're leaving.
Yeah.
Within a year.
That partly came around because Commissioner Hepplestate had wanted to tour the building, and while we were touring, we were talking to the extension office, and they were talking about that they were gonna be moving their things out of that building because they're not going to the new site, they're going to their other Kearneysville farm location. And so it's like, oh.
Yeah.
We're looking at that space.
Great.
The one other piece of mind, it looks like because of the holidays, the end of next week, there's not a county commission meeting next week. I assume that the following, that there will be another meeting in June that the board member will be selected. I don't know.
Actually, the June 5th meeting that we had was really a double meeting. That's why it wasn't planning commission meeting long. It was only like 7 or 8 hours.
Oh, that's
But,
right. You guys
Yeah,
have a lot.
and that's because we're not having this.
But I don't know.
It would normally be next week, so our next regularly scheduled meeting is the 3rd of July. I think we're going to have an online meeting, a quickie meeting to go over final details of the building purchase. That's anticipated shortly. That will be one of those meetings where there's no public comments and basically it's just a quick in and out to look at the final details. But so the July meeting is the next regular scheduled meeting. To answer your question in a roundabout way, but I like to give out as much information as I possibly
I
can.
don't- Has the vacancy been properly noticed? Yeah, 'cause I know it was, I know in the notice that you shared with me, it was, these are coming open, but I don't know if it's been now properly noticed and.
Is that the opening for Elliot?
Yeah.
He does have, yes, I guess he has not reapplied.
So there had been a press release
Yeah.
in May.
Right.
Yeah, our staff is really good about keeping a tickler file and making sure that the notices go in the newspaper. I don't think we do the newspaper anymore, but the notices go out in a timely manner because we have to do a certain amount of advertising.
Yeah.
For any board openings on any board that we have. So but like I said, the staff has been very, very good about that. I don't really think we've missed one in case. In spite of what you may have heard by some of the naysayers out there who think that, well, we're really slack and we have a lot of openings. That isn't true.
Mhm.
We're filling positions.
Yeah, I think last year it was just, it was noticed, like the process started late, so we didn't get our person until late, so it sort of delayed some stuff, but. Yeah, so I don't know if it's been I don't even know where to find it if it's been properly noticed.
Do
but-
you know of anyone that has applied for the opening
Yeah.
position? Okay.
Yeah, I know of a few people that were interested and I gave them information of how to apply and where to apply. One of the people ended up not being a Jefferson resident, so she said.
That doesn't work
So,
generally.
yeah.
And it is always good, anybody that applies this board or any others, always show up if you can. If you can't show up in person, at least be online.
Right,
So
That really does make a big difference.
So if July 3rd, they are appointed, then Mr. Rhodes, I'll get to them and get them sworn in. So that they can. And I wonder if they do that swearing in by video now.
I don't think they do that,
yeah, I think, yeah, anyways, well, it'll be solved, honestly, out of all the things that we have to worry about. We have a quorum, we can still operate, not super worried about it.
Good.
However, we'd like it done.
Yes, ma'am.
When possible.
Message received.
When possible, but no, I'm just trying to say, like, we can still operate, we're not like sitting here, we're like, oh, we're deficient in our quorum, so it's out of all the. I'm more worried about budget than I am about this position, so
We're not done.
great. Next meeting is July 11th, so outside of anything else, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
A second.
All right, any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
What did you need?
Thanks, everybody.
Additional
Thanks, Dan.
information
Thanks, Dan.
for what was-
So some of it's just that